Welcome to the Ahead Fall Summit. We host these summits virtually, for now, every spring and fall, and this is our third one in the series, and we're really excited about today's event. A year ago, we focused on cloud computing at scale. This past spring, our summit was all about automation at scale, and now our third summit addresses data and analytics, in particular, how enterprises can scale and accelerate innovation through modern data practices. We've assembled four great informative sessions today. We'll start off with Michelle Gates of Forrester Research talking about the future of data, how it's both embedded and elastic, and what you should do now to begin capitalizing on that future. I then follow up by moderating a panel discussion with three great thought leaders from Cigna, Chamberlain Group, and from the London Stock Exchange on delivering insights at scale and doing so faster. This session is put on in partnership with CDO Magazine. We'll take a break and then come back and hear from two Ahead subject matter experts, Matt Sweetenham and Eric Mader. Matt on defining a modern data architecture, and Eric on applying DevOps and agile thinking to data analytics. Really informative and action-oriented content. I want to thank our sponsors, Data Robot, VMware, Cohesity, Confluent, Dataiku, HashiCorp, and Starburst. Please be sure to visit their virtual booths. And please be sure to fill out the feedback survey that you'll find on our portal here. We appreciate you being here, and we really want to hear that feedback. So with all that said, let me turn it over to Michelle from Forrester on the future of data, embedded and elastic. Enjoy the summit.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Michelle Gatz. I'm a VP and Principal Analyst at Forrester Research, and I'm here to talk to you about my favorite topic, which is data. And I want to give you a little bit of a sense around what is the future of data? Where is it going? And when we talk about embedded and elastic, what do we actually mean by that? So let me walk through sort of the three things that we're going to cover today. Number one is it's always good to reflect, see what's happening, see what's influencing us, understand the trends that are around for our data. Then we'll talk about how to reimagine, create that vision for where data can really make a difference in our organization. And I'll provide some examples of this. And then lastly, reinvent. This is where we're going to give you three things that you can do now to help you come into the future of data and be successful and get those business results that you were looking for. So let's put our Zen on. It's all about reflection. Where is this going? First of all, my favorite comedian is Mike Birbiglia. He always has a way of really describing the state of things and creating these aha moments with you in a comedic sense. And one of the things that he talks about is amusement parks. And he says, how many people do you know have thrown up in the Scrambler or some other carnival ride? A lot of people is the answer, is what he said. Well, that is a great analogy for where we are today when it comes to data. We're living through that data scramble. We need to find, where is our data? Is it in our applications? Is it in old warehouses and legacy systems? Is it in our data lake? Is it with partners? Do we need open data or data from third parties? It's a real challenge to figure out where it is, how to manage it, deal with it in a highly distributed ecosystem today. And not only does it feel like the data itself is scrambled, we feel scrambled as we're scrambling to try to access it, make it available, bring it together, and ultimately get those insights that we're able to push our business forward on. Now, certainly we can't ignore what's been going on for more than a year now from a pandemic perspective. Significant, sometimes overwhelming disruption, but we're making it through. But it's not just during this pandemic period that we're dealing with these types of changes and fluctuations. We had a lot of disruption in our industries pre-pandemic. We had a lot of change with new technology platform companies coming up. We had disruption of those tech firms in our industries. And customers have different expectations about how we can immediately satisfy the things that they want to accomplish. There's no waiting weeks and months anymore to meet consumer demands or to meet your business partner demands, whether you're B2C or whether you're B2B. And so, really, what we're looking at is now having a better framework to be positioned towards the types of changes, disruptions, and fluctuations that happen within our market and with our customers and our competitors. So, we talk about this at Forrester around having a future fit strategy. And from a technology perspective, as data professionals, how do we want to look at it? Number one, we have to be adaptive to the market. We have to have the ability to think creatively about new ways and new approaches to address not only what is trending that forces us to be adaptive, but also to be creative in what are the solutions that we can deploy. What can we try out? What can work for us? And then lastly, we want to put these things into play so that it isn't just solving the immediate problem of the day, but are we resilient to the future? Is it making us stronger for the next disruption or the next fluctuation that's in that environment? And then as we think about what that strategy is, we are devising the platforms, the practices, and the partners in place that will enable that. And platforms, practices, and partners is your 3P, your 3 PPTs, which is people, process, and technology. It's really the entire community of practice that we want to put together so that we achieve a future fit capability. Now, some of the technology trends that we're looking towards to achieve future fit and create better experiences with our customers and higher value for the company is edge computing. Now, we think about edge computing very much around IoT types of constructs, devices, machines, and so on. But it's more than that. There's a lot of data that we are capturing in that IoT environment. And more, we need to connect not only what is happening from all of that sensor and machine information, but what does that mean for our customer experiences, for the value that our products are providing, and really creating connected experiences where edge computing and artificial intelligence with data is starting to get married together. We see some really interesting trends coming out of it in 2020. Certainly, edge computing was at high adoption. And in fact, in 2020, it was at 63%. This year, adoption and of that emerging technology is up at a higher 68%. And the difference being is that rather than being in planning stages with edge to support artificial intelligence, it's becoming more use case driven. It's connecting to real-time insights and experiences with our customers, and it's helping to better empower our employees, not only to do their jobs and collaborate effectively with each other, but create and support the experiences that customers are demanding today, giving much more agility here. So that transition of just technology strategy to real business strategy is taking hold because data and AI are connecting more holistically to emerging tech like edge computing. Now, artificial intelligence, let's look at the state of AI. It's, in the past, and in fact, I've been looking at this all the way back to 2013, modern AI has been really interesting. A lot of proof of concepts have been going on, but it's stalled out for a little while. Back in 2019, and in fact, only about half of organizations were really pushing forward and adopting AI as part of the way that they do business. That has absolutely changed now. In 2021, we see 85% are adopting artificial intelligence and changing the way that they do business to be more insight driven. But the other data point that was really fascinating to me, and telling us that modern AI is becoming an everyday function, is that there is less hesitancy about, does AI work? And we are only seeing 23% of organizations still a little bit nervous around the maturity of technology. And really what we've done is we've really, reached the height of what AI is going to be able to do for us. So the question is to ask yourself is, are you future fit? And are you future fit with your data? So number one, look back. Are you looking down at your data? Do you view your strategies, your practices, the enablement from the perspective of, can you capture, transform, deliver, and govern that information? It's really about the data and the data management. And that's good. And you still need that, but it does create some friction and challenges for your organization if you're not thinking much more holistically and looking up. And today it is time to look up. If you don't see your business unfolding before you and the market unfolding before you, and not aligning your data to those insights, decisions, actions, and the business results, it's going to be very difficult to get the value out of your data and the investments that you're making to push forward into a more modern data platform, being cloud first, and even achieving those aspirations with the investments in emerging technology like edge computing. So how do we do this? How do we reimagine? What's our vision of the future? So this is where we start to think about data needs to be elastic. We sort of demonstrated these ideas about being, how data and AI are embedded in our digital experiences, but being elastic means that as our business changes, as our market changes, our data flows with that. It expands and contracts to the different needs and use cases and new objectives that our business stakeholders have. Now, it's probably easier to see this rather than just talk about it theoretically. So one of the things that we can do is break this down into an overall framework. The way that businesses operate today is much more around business networks, vast ecosystems, differences in our partnerships, differences with our customers, and the way that we collaborate and communicate and crowdsource new capabilities and new values. Then how you do this is really around the thinking of the way that you're going to scale out across distributed digital estates, and basically your digital, your distributed data estates. You have to scale up and scale down the compute capabilities in order to support not just data for analytics and data science purposes, but what happens when machine learning models and event-driven architectures have new data flow, messaging, and integration demands up in our application systems and solutions. And then lastly, we have to think about how do we elastically scale spinning up and spinning down data environments as they are appropriate and relevant to the types of creativity that data and insight bring to our organization. And then lastly, the ability to kind of, test and learn and optimize based off of what we've been doing and what we know. Those business networks are really grounded around your core capabilities that happen in your organization. Are you looking down your supply chains? Are you thinking about how you communicate internally? There's a lot of virtual communication and collaboration happening right now. Purchasing, commerce environments, logistics. How do you get products and fulfill demands? Thinking about how understanding your customers and that customer experience, and certainly things about building products. Nothing is done in a business silo. It's not, grounded in one brick building anymore as a factory to produce products and value propositions and services. This network is spanning across not only a variety of partnerships that you have, as we talked about, but also the infrastructure that's supporting this is widely varied. So we're looking at architecture platforms that are vast, but also very software defined and stateless, so they're flexible. And this has implications on our data. And this is why data is now networked as well. And we're thinking about where does data live, but we're also thinking about the metadata that is related to this. Metadata hides in different technologies that we want to be able to extract to provide better value and business experiences. The internet has all of that metadata about that communication and data flows. Blockchain is your database and audit trail of enablement and communication and collaboration between different parties for trusted. You've got messaging capabilities in the way that you're communicating and collaborating over things like Slack. Wi-Fi is another telecommunication transport that has rich metadata, and so on and so forth. So you really have to be thinking about the data network in terms of where is your data hiding and being collected in the nooks and crannies of your business practices. And we can see this manifest itself in areas like smart cities and autonomous vehicles. Modern data, modern digital only works when data can be elastic, because you're constantly changing the footprint of the data source itself. It's not just what do you bring back to the cloud anymore to understand operations, understand customer experience, seeing the performance, creating new strategies and plans to move forward. Data is valuable when it's activated. And so we're reducing the footprint of data to meet things like messaging bus, Kafka topic areas. We're thinking about sharding our data for personalization and privacy security types of concerns. And we're also recognizing that many of these environments, whether that's a car, whether that's a mobile device, whether that's a street light, it doesn't matter what's in the infrastructure, but they are operating as intelligent nodes themselves. They are then sharing data and insight, transferring some of that learning and knowledge as it emerges, and then ultimately the expansion and contraction, that elasticity is happening in the way that you're supporting synchronous and asynchronous processes, and ultimately driving back and rationalizing the cadence of the ephemeral nature of the data, so that you have strong insights and you're able to introduce AI to better scale those experiences and data value propositions. We're starting to make the transition in our organizations, setting a better vision for what we want and who we want to be as an insight-driven business, seeing progress here by an increase in maturity between over the past 2 years by 7%. And then lastly, why is this happening? Because we are making the investments in data. And certainly in the past year, we've seen an acceleration of our data strategies and data investments happening. And what is that doing? That is causing an increase of maturity of 12% in the past 2 years. But where is this investment going? Why is that maturity happening? And it's happening because data flows and investment are being adopted to handle the variety of patterns of artificial intelligence in our new digital ecosystems. And as we showed in that smart city example, it's all about not that data is staying persistent and being stored in some sort of a database and repository. The value comes in how that data is moved, how that data is shared. It's the data flows. It's the pipelining capabilities, that integration that really starts to create the fabric and enable that broader network where value is going to be created. And in the past year, we have seen nearly a doubling of investment within our data and analytics budget to address data integration, so that data is where it needs to be, insight is where it needs to be, and it's highly relevant and personalized, so the experience of having that data and having that insight is directly connected to our value. And that value is extensive, as we see with remote patient monitoring. So if you can take a look at first, what's the transition in healthcare been over the past year, but even leading up to this is what are the ways that we can use digital capabilities and personal devices to to better support disease management. And if we look more succinctly at disease management through the lens of diabetes, the ability to connect data across an extremely distributed ecosystem, both capitalizing on the power and performance of the cloud to be still running cloud native, but also taking into account all of those edge devices, and whether they are personal devices like a watch, your mobile phone, or whether they are things like a diabetes insulin pump. You need all of this information. Sometimes you have access to it, sometimes you don't have access to it. But a well defined architecture that is supporting not just the digital capabilities, but really the data, so that these digital capabilities can be intelligent and helping to ensure that disease management is effective, is what we're looking at here. And from a diabetes perspective, you can see, the return on investment by improvement in onboarding capabilities, by the improvement in the cost of devices, by the opportunity of expanding new revenue streams by providing better patient care and better patient services within here. And ultimately, what does all of this modernization do to reduce the cost of supporting disease management, even as you scale out? And this isn't just unique to diabetes. Any disease that has a disease management program and framework can be harnessed within here. So you can even look and apply this model for asthma, heart failure, COPD, kidney disease, and other type, and other diabetes types of capabilities. And ultimately, you're growing and expanding that footprint of value. So let's reinvent now. It's time to think about what are the 3 things that are going to make you successful in stepping into the future of data so that you can be embedded and elastic. So number 1, please ask different questions. Number 2, think about setting different goals. And number 3, think about how you design differently your data. So number 1, what does it look like to go after this differently? Challenge your assumptions. Don't assume that the way that you've looked at your business in the past is the way that you should look and use insights for your business and business understanding in the future. Really ask yourself, are you measuring the right thing? Are you setting the right goals? Those sorts of things. And one automotive company specifically did this. They understood that rideshare was a really popular service. But they also recognized that it was taking a very long time for companies like Uber and Lyft to become profitable. And their question is if they entered the rideshare market with their fleet of cars, and have a partnership ecosystem to deliver on rideshare capabilities, well, could they be profitable? So really what they did is they created a simulation, a visual interactive environment that really recreated and gamified what rideshare looked like. And basically understanding that different levers that they could pull, they could hypothesis test to understand what is the right business model that gets them to profitability. So it's really using data, analytics, and AI techniques in order to better support strategic planning. In this case, they were able to scale out a pilot in 10 months versus years when you're thinking about starting a business. And it also allowed them to gamify the potential of future types of services. So not only could they deploy a fleet for rideshare, but what happens when that fleet is now electric? What if that fleet is autonomous? And so again, it's not just one size fits all for that initial question of profitability. It's leading them down different types of business models or a journey in their business model to work from. Now, the second thing is, kind of looking at your business differently again, which is around, do you just stay in the lane of something like customer experience with support and purchasing or e-commerce? Or do you take a look and understand that front end experience in context of the back end operations that ultimately gets the delivery of value. And KLM over a 5 year period really took the mindset of saying, we need to look at flight operations holistically and in the context of what we're delivering to our customers. This actually better positioned them to be flexible to the changes and the demands of what has happened from a pandemic perspective, because they were able to interpret what was going on within maintenance and repair. They were able to understand what happens within general, flight ops practices. They could understand what's happening with their partners and the delivering of services and managing different contracts and relationships that they had. They could also take a look at booking systems. They can see the experience on board, and ultimately at the end, what was that, revenue capability. And seeing this holistically and tying that into the information that they had around flight ops that was coming from airports and infrastructure, they really could see an end-to-end view of their airline industry for them. Now, that's really interesting. And certainly it's led to an increase in revenue and a decrease in costs. So they're much more, profitable at the same time. But it also illustrated that they had something here. And so now this platform has been released as a environment to other airlines to participate and gain value with it as well. And then lastly, sometimes you just don't have to be all that technically sophisticated to get the most out of your data in the future. What it really comes down to is, are you human centric? Do you recognize not just data being built from the bottom up as a system, but really being built from the top down, where you're seeing data through the lens of your employee, and your customer? And Kimpton does this really well, thinking about their CRM system and their registration systems, all of those applications that are enabling their hotels, and connecting that back to their customer loyalty programs. And what was really great, this is actually a personal experience of mine, is that I never liked the Jefferson bus that is in my room at the Kimpton Hotel. It's creepy. It looks at me and follows me around in my room. I just hate it. And I asked them on the first visit to remove that bust from my hotel room so I could feel a little bit more comfortable. All it is a data point. Michelle does not like a Jefferson bust in her hotel room. And every time now that I have gone back repeatedly, they verify with me that they have removed the Jefferson bust before I enter that room. It's a data point. It's not an aggregation. It's not a big algorithm. It's just knowing that that data is important and actionable. So hopefully I've been able to convince you where the future of data is headed, being embedded and elastic, giving you some ideas about how to strategically position towards this. So reflect, as we spoke about, embrace convergence of edge and AI and data in the context of our new business networks and our operating model. I want you to reimagine, create a vision of how to look up from your systems and really see your business and how data operates as a network within this environment. And then lastly, I've given you 3 things to think about, and how do you take your first step forward and prepare to enter this new age by thinking about, how do you put elastic first and meet your new goals, insights, and experiences. And then lastly, let's go back again to Mike Birbiglia. What would he say? He says, I didn't realize how good I was with computers until I met my parents. So think about your traditional approaches and traditional ecosystems that's managing your data and analytics as your parents' platform, and think of all the cool things and all your competencies that you have now, and train that into the new digital ecosystems and value propositions that you would like to share and create within your own business. So thank you for joining me today. And if you have any questions, you're certainly able to follow up with myself. I've provided my email below, but it's been great to share the future of data with you. And I look forward to having more conversations.